Good afternoon, everyone. I'm really glad to be back with you again. And I can't be happier than to have with me one of my dearest friends, colleagues, and longtime, I don't know, sisters, I think, really. We can describe ourselves now. Um, to talk about what's going on, basically focusing on Lebanon, because people may not be aware and they may not understand what is happening inside Lebanon in order to try and perhaps provoke a civil war inside Lebanon, to turn the Lebanese army against Hezbollah, while, of course, the country is under attack by Israel. So maybe we can, first of all, explain the background to the current government structure in Lebanon and how it works or doesn't work as regards decision making, because people will probably know that Hezbollah is part of that governmental structure. The political wing of Hezbollah is part of that governmental structure. And yet at the moment, we're seeing a concerted effort by certain wings within that government to undermine the resistance, to work alongside Washington and Israel to secure their agenda inside Lebanon. So, Marwa, yeah, can we just have a kind of a recap of
Sure.
how the governmental structure works in Lebanon?
Definitely. First, thank you very much, Vanessa, for having me on your platform. It's always a pleasure. And you are now more than a sister. We are even spiritually connected, which is something that you rarely ever find in a lifetime. So I'm very glad, and I have so much gratitude for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and for this life that had matched us together to become close friends and sisters and on the same road of resistance, inshallah. Thank you very
Mm,
much for your efforts. Well, I want to be brief a bit. I wrote a couple of points just to make sure that I'm on point so we can move on to
mm,
the most important part of what's going on at the moment in Lebanon. Let's start by what the Lebanese political system is actually described as, or what it functions as. It functions as something called the confessional power sharing system. What does that mean? It means that the political authority is distributed among the country's major religious communities. In Lebanon, you know that we have sects, we have different sects, we have different religions, we have more than 18 sects that govern actually Lebanon, and these sects are all represented within the parliament in Lebanon. The modern structure of what we know as the Lebanese state as we speak was shaped just after the independence that happened in 1943. We call it independence, but people who are sane, who know how to read history, know that it had nothing to do with independence. We were under the French mandate, and it's ridiculous to call it independence when not even one man gave his life for this independence, as opposed, for example, to Algeria and what they did to gain their independence, more than 1.5 million martyrs. So the 1943 initiation of the Lebanese state was known as the National Pact. And then later it was justified under the so-called Ta'if Accord, which happened after the Lebanese Civil War that started in 1975 and ended in 1989. So under that system, we have three powerful positions in the state that are allocated by sect. And this is not in the Constitution. The Constitution does not say that this power should be in this sect's hands. No, this is according to an accord, the agreement signed after the Civil War. So it is not constitutional. It's only just to make sure that these sects are happy and they don't fight one another again. Under this system, these three powerful positions are represented by the President of the Republic, who should be a Maronite Christian, the Prime Minister of the Republic, who's a Sunni Muslim, and the Speaker of the Parliament, who is a Shia Muslim. Now, this arrangement is intended to preserve some sort of a balance, but on the ground, it does not preserve a balance. It actually takes away from the opportunity that young Lebanese men and women have in their heart and in their mind to give to their own republic. So this republic would start looking like a republic, to be honest with you. Now, institutionally, when we talk about certain institutions in Lebanon, it's made of three branches. We have the executive branch, consisting the president and the prime minister, and the council of ministers, which are now basically waging their own war against the resistance vis-a-vis the war that Zionist Israel is conducting as we speak, commonly known as the cabinet. So the cabinet has the president, the prime minister, and the council of ministers. The president is the head, and he plays a key role in appointing the prime minister and approving governments. So The prime minister in Lebanon is not elected. He is appointed by the president. Now, keep that in mind, because even the president is not elected by the people. So you have to keep that in mind. I'll explain later. The prime minister just heads the government, and he oversees the day-to-day executive authority through the cabinet. So the constitution is speaking, what Nawaf Salam is now trying to do, which is to inflict some sort of clashes between the Lebanese army and the resistance, is unconstitutional. It's not his job to do so. So we'll get back to that when we talk about the statement that was released by the head of the Lebanese army. Now, you have the legislative branch in the Parliament of Lebanon, which is a body composed of 128 members. I know Lebanon is too tiny to have 128 members, but as I told you, they were trying just to amuse 18 different sects into having them all represented in Parliament. These are divided equally. 128 divided equally between Muslim and Christians, not to take into account that Muslims are actually the majority in the country. So if we're going to talk about democracy, this is not democracy, but let's not go there, because honestly, it doesn't mean anything at the level of politics at the moment in Lebanon. Regardless of the demographic changes that have been dramatically on the move since 1943, by the way. And the last consensus, by the way, that we had to know how many of each sect is there, I think it was in 1936, and they never attempted another one again. But the parliament, what does it do? It passes laws, it elects the president, and it grants or withdraws confidence from the government that the president appoints. So we, the people, vote for 128 members of parliament. Those 128, which are divided between Christians and Muslims, they vote for a president with 128 votes. When the president is elected, he gets to form the cabinet, and the parliament gets to either give confidence or withdraw confidence from the government. So now, constitutionally speaking, with everything that's happening, the parliament has, according to the constitution, the power to withdraw confidence from the government. But that doesn't affect the president. Something else might affect the president. We'll talk about it later. Now, the third branch is the judicial branch, which is formally independent, and it includes courts and at multiple levels, and it's something that we have pride in Lebanon. But up until recently, Nawaf Salam started introducing his influence into the judicial branch, but it's something a bit tough to do, because even the judicial branch in Lebanon, with the Supreme Judicial Council that oversees parts of the judiciary, is also according to sect. So one sect cannot actually take advantage of the system, because the other sect would stop it. So in theory, this system is to prevent domination by any single community. In practice, however, the power sharing formula often leads to political deadlock. Yani, how many times have we been without president?
I was going to ask, yes.
How many times have we, like, for example, now they couldn't wait for the war to actually kick off, so they can postpone the parliamentary elections 2.5 years. 2.5, why? Why not postpone it? Why not postpone it until the war is over and then decide that? Who's going to benefit if the parliament remains as is? Also keep that in mind. So as a result, the government, the formation of the government and the major reforms in Lebanon sometimes take months, if not years, to actually get results. Something as stupid as electricity, power, energy, which we have paid so far more than $40 billion to try and rehabilitate it and to make it move up until now. 40 billion. You know how much it costs to build a nuclear power plant? $5 billion. We've paid $40 billion already. Where is the money? Where did it go?
Where's the electricity?
Non-existent. We have motor generators, private motor generators that cost us a fortune. And if the government actually takes that money, it would make it much easier for us to have 24-hour electricity. But they don't. It's part of the sanctions and no-nos that are imposed by the United States of America against the government. Or else we would have gotten free electricity from Syria. We would have gotten free electricity, former Syria, not this one. We would have gotten free electricity by power plants for free built by Iran. That was a no as well. Even Russia came along and said, look, we can build you a power plant and we not take money. We could just take money BOT style. They still said no, because the Americans wouldn't allow it. So this is how the system in Lebanon runs. And it's important for the people to understand how the system runs, to understand why we are literally at a crossroads, Vanessa, in Lebanon when it comes to the government headed by the president, And what I mean, the first branch of power that I spoke about, which is the legislative, the government part, because the executive branch of the government, which is the president, underneath is the prime minister and the cabinet. It's important to realize that at a moment in time, if the demands and requests by this government, led by Prime Minister Nawaf Salam at the executive branch, to push the Lebanese army into actual face-to-face confrontation with the resistance, multiple things might happen, and all of them are not good.
Just one quick question on that. You've described the system really well, and it does sound, the point of the constant gridlock, I'm assuming, also refers to policy making, to passing policies in the country. But also, in your opinion, to what degree are the enemies of the resistance able to influence that system? Let's talk about the legislative and executive branch,
yeah.
but even also the judicial branch, or is the judicial branch hands off?
Honestly, colonial powers have always, it's not new, and it's not only limited to Lebanon. They have always tried to impose their will on the internal affairs of sovereign states, which they deem to be under their wing, to be under their submissive will, if you will. So let's start with the executive branch. For example, naming a president, which has to be a Christian Maronite specifically. The name always has to be run by the United States of America ever since the Lebanese entity was born in 1943. First, it was run by the French, and then when the French lost power, it was run by the Americans in Lebanon in specific. The name has to be run by the the governmental institutions of the United States of America, which is 12,000 or 10,000, if I'm exact, 10,000 kilometers away, to agree or disagree upon the name of the person who should become the president of Lebanon. So the name itself, it might take years. Before electing President Michel Aoun, we remained without a president for 2.5 years. And then after President Michel Aoun left power, I think it was in 2023, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, it was 2023. After his term was finalized, we waited for another year. Mind you, we had war with Zionist Israel up until the first month of 2025. I think it was January 9, 2025, when the new president was, the name of the new president was accepted to be elected in parliament. But even if that name is accepted, you have the entire parliament, 128 members of parliament who need to agree on that name. What we see happen during the last term of President Joseph Aoun in January 9, what happened was the first, it was on two sessions. The first session of the election, he did not make it, because all the pro-resistance factions decided not to vote, just to show everyone that if they decided to abstain or change the vote, you will not have a president. And because of that, at that time, when he was the head of the military, the commander of the military, Joseph Aoun, he had made a pact with the resistance that he will keep the resistance protected within the constitution, that he will not in any way risk their entity, especially their military wing, and that he will put at the top priority of his new term to rebuild and help out the people who lost their homes, lost their families, and lost their businesses. None of the above happened. The moment he became president, everything changed. Everything changed to a point when Pope, forgot his name, when
Leo.
the Pope, Leo, yes. When Pope Leo came to Lebanon, during the speech where he was welcoming the Pope, he mentioned the Abraham Agreement. He didn't call it the Abraham Accord. He said that all the Abrahamic religions should come together. And he was preparing for normalization as early as that. So that brings us to the fact that he reneged on the promises that he gave to the resistance and their allies in Lebanon. Now, Another form of intervention is when those colonial powers intervene with the name of the prime minister, and this is exactly what happened in Lebanon, because supposedly it was supposed for the what happens? How does the president names the prime minister? He calls on all political factions that are represented in the legislative branch in the parliament. He calls upon them to come visit him in the presidential palace and give him a name. Each block gives him a name where they want to give confidence for. And the name at that point, which was agreed upon, was Najib Mikati. It was not Nawaf Salam. No one even knew who Nawaf Salam is. Nawaf Salam at that time was still a judge, quote unquote, at the, was it the ICJ or the ICC? One of those courts that mean nothing in the real world, but he was a judge in those courts. So what happened is, on their way, many factions, especially factions that are belonging to the Sunni sect and the Maronite sects, on their way to visit the president, they started having phone calls by supposedly the Saudi embassy to change the vote from Najib Mikati to Nawaf Salam, which ended up being a full scandal at the Lebanese level, because months later, at the end of 2025, it was exposed that the person who was making the phone calls was none other than a plumber who works for a Sunni sheikh, who was impersonating a Saudi prince because he knows how to speak the Saudi dialect, up until now, the investigation is not even over yet. They are both under investigation. We still don't know who was making the phone calls to the sheikh to tell him to change those votes and take money from those politicians and give them at some point to NGOs, at some point for his own benefit, for his own pocket. But all fingers point to Zionist Israel, because what happened when it exploded, when it was exposed, the Saudi embassy in Lebanon says the person who was making the phone calls, whose name was Abu Omar, they have no idea who Abu Omar is. They don't have Abu Omar in the embassy. They don't have Abu Omar in the royal court back in Riyadh. So even Riyadh was like, even Riyadh did not know that Nawaf Salam, supposedly, that Nawaf Salam was going to be elected, because they had already given the green light for Najib Mikati. Because in Lebanon, the Sunni sect has to get the blessings of Saudi Arabia before they name the next Sunni leader. This is how things goes. Honestly, the only sect that doesn't take any allegiance to anyone is the Shia sect when it comes to these positions. Yes, we are directly linked to Iran when it comes to ideology, but Iran has never, ever, since 1979 and before and after, said, and they don't even know the names of the politicians in Lebanon. They just know Nabi Berri because he's been there since forever. But even Nabi Berri is not influenced by Hezbollah. He has his own political movement, but he's allied to Hezbollah. But to go back to the point that I'm saying, so you have also the name of the prime minister that was also embedded by someone to make sure that he becomes appointed. Then you have the prime minister who, when he gets appointed, he gets to appoint his own cabinet. The ministers are usually between 9 to 16 ministers, depends on what kind of ministerial tasks are given. And this council is also divided into sects. So, for example, the Shia has 3, the Maronites have 3. So it's always divided into sects. And usually the sects are according to how much each sect has represented in parliament. So let's say that the Shia sect in parliament, let's say, for example, for the sake of the argument, they are, let's say, 15%. So 15% should be represented in the cabinet of ministers, and etc. for the remaining sects that are represented in parliament. So that is in the hands of the prime minister, but also in the hands of the sects who would give the prime minister names that they accept. Because if the prime minister goes ahead and let's say chooses 3 Shia ministers that are not part of the majority of the Shia coalition found in the legislative branch in the parliament, the Shias in the parliament would just withdraw their confidence from the government. The government wouldn't be formed. So he has to, because, or else he will be deadlocked. It would be like a brick wall in front of him. So that's how he names them. So even at that time, when those sects choose those names, they are usually randomly chosen by people who are either they have nepotism within their families, or who are businessmen, or who represent certain tribes in Lebanon, for example. It's rarely ever, it is about actual professional specialization in each
Merit.
minute.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
So that's how that happens. Now, the judicial issue is also according to sects, but that has to do, then sometimes the judicial branch, the Supreme Judicial Council, would take sometimes months to be formed, because there wouldn't be enough numbers of a certain sect who can legally be appointed as judges. Even something as ridiculous as this would stop a Supreme Judicial Court Council from being put together, from being nominated, and to start working. So also it has to do with the sects, but usually it has freedom that is not linked to the president or the prime minister. So they work, but they work according to their sect's interests, because they were put in place to begin with by their respective sects. I hope people are understanding what I'm saying. It's very complicated. I know you literally have to be living in Lebanon for more than 10 years to start understanding. But even then,
Yes, agreed.
as a Lebanese civilian myself, 98% of the time, when I hear the policies coming out of governments or the legislative orders coming out of the parliament, I go like, excuse, could you repeat that again? I didn't get it. So yeah, it's a bit complicated, but that's how it happens.
Thank you, Marwa. That made it a little bit clearer. But as you say, I've been living here for a year now, and I'm still in complete confusion over quite a lot of what goes on in Lebanon, which can sometimes be quite comedic. I do also have to say, from that perspective.
Even when bombs are falling, we have the capability to be very sarcastic and funny about it.
Right. I'm just going to read the introduction to what you posted this morning, because I think this is so incredibly important with regards actually to the whole future of Lebanon, right? To the future of the resistance, to the future of the region, and to the future particularly,
everyone who's inside Lebanon, doesn't matter if he's Lebanese or not. If you're living in that country, we are at a crossroad that would affect everyone.
Exactly. So your introduction, which was basically a serious political and institutional confrontation, appears to be unfolding within the state structure of Lebanon, following reports that the head of the army, commander of the Lebanese Armed Forces, Rudolf Heikel, has refused to allow the military to be drawn into an internal confrontation. Can you just explain the background and, maybe then go on into the points that you made in the post and how this is so, and Heikel has been showing a huge degree of loyalty to Lebanon, loyalty to the resistance, loyalty to the integrity.
Because I don't trust anyone anymore, let's just call it balance.
I understand.
Let's just call it balance. He's showing a lot of balance when it comes to how things are operating inside of Lebanon. What happened? After the election of President Joseph Aoun, he was himself the commander of the Lebanese Armed Forces. And Heikel was one of the many nominated to become in his position as commanders. And he is a very trusted man by the president himself, which is why what's happening now is a clash. And this clash, as I explained further on, would definitively put in place whether the army will be divided or not. Let's start with Heikel. He came to power, and he came to power at a very complicated, complex timing, which is Lebanon getting out of a war that was devastating for the resistance, devastating for the state as well, because they didn't have the necessary capabilities, especially monetary capabilities, to help out the people, because we all paid our own reconstruction. Vanessa, you know that about the community of the resistance. We paid for everything on our own. During 2006, we had great help coming from the Islamic Republic of Iran, but because of that, the Americans made sure that the president makes policies that would ban the Iranian airlines from landing in Lebanon to make sure that we don't get the help that we need. Anyways, when Heikel was announced to be the next commander of the Lebanese Armed Forces, he started working vis-a-vis the demands of the government and with the requirements on the ground that are represented to him by the resistance command, the new commanders in the resistance. And as you know, there's a tripartite that Samahat Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah used to be very vocal about. Al-Jaysh, Sha'ab, Muqawama. He used to say army, people, and resistance. He used to put the army first because ever since he became Secretary General of Hezbollah, of the resistance, he had great relationship with the Lebanese army because he saw the Lebanese army as a very important force to keep things neat, balanced, and away from internal strife within the Lebanese territories. He knew that the capabilities of the army will not be allowed to be enhanced by colonial powers, but he knew at least internally the army was very much respected and would be literally holding the back of the resistance by maintaining peace and stability within Lebanese territory. So this is the extension of why Haikal now is showing balance, because he does not want to be the man who orders or who follows the orders of the, I can't call him names, I'm fasting, I would break my fast, of the prime minister. Let's just say Ma'moun Bek is good, Ma'moun Bek, of the prime minister in Lebanon, because his demands are equal to Lebanese civil war. So President, what is it? At the beginning of the war, just 10 days ago, Prime Minister said that he bans all military actions of Hezbollah, and he wants to completely disarm Hezbollah, and he wants the army to do it and to do it as fast as possible, and then to take all over the land that usually is under or a stronghold for Hezbollah, especially in Dahi, Biqa, and South Lebanon. Let's begin by this is impossible because these swaths of land will not be enough for the Lebanese army to cover them. Number two, the Lebanese army already, according to the ceasefire that was signed on November 27, 2024, he was to take over in southern Lithuania and the resistance was to leave. But people don't understand, especially colonial people, don't understand that the resistance is the people. It is the people. Yani, what, are you going to kick us out? Yani, if the Israelis, if I'm sitting at home and Israeli would come, knock on my door to take my house, what should I like clap for him, invite him in? I will kill him. I will like literally kill him. This is the resistance of the people, the natives. So supposedly there were no forms of resistance shown, and multiple warehouses of the resistance in the southern part of the Litani were given by the resistance to the army to abide by the ceasefire that was signed in November 27, 2024. That completely was shattered after 15 months of Zionist Israel not abiding by it, killing more than 500 humans in Lebanon, bombing schools, bombing hospitals, bombing residential areas, and then at the end, killing someone as important as Imam Sayyid Ali Khamenei and preparing 100,000 soldiers to invade Lebanon. So the resistance was like, enough. Khalas, habibi. Throw the missiles to make sure that the people leave South Lebanon, so no massacres would happen. Unfortunately, massacres did happen because a lot of people did not afford to leave and find places. Otherwise, they decided to stay back home. And we all know Zionist Israel just loves to commit massacres because no one gives a damn whether it does or not. So that's broken. The ceasefire is now broken. So any kind of agreement that was made between the resistance and the army is broken, which is why at the very first hours of the Zionist entity aggression against Lebanon on the night of March 1st, we saw the Lebanese army leave.
Yeah.
You know why they left? Everyone was saying, look, people in Lebanon, they are very fast to jump into conclusions and start calling the Lebanese army names. No. I could be 110% sure that the resistance told them to leave because they knew if they remained there, Israelis would kill them. They would bomb them. Just actually 4 days before the start of the war on March 1st, Israeli entity actually shot and injured Lebanese army soldiers in Khiyam when they were trying to take their legitimate point and position. They were shot at and they were wounded.
Yeah.
They could have been killed. I think one was killed. I need to double check the numbers, but I know for a fact that more than 5 were wounded. So the resistance.
And to be clear, Israel's pretext for attacking them was that the Lebanese army on Lebanese territory had established bases and military posts without coordination with Israel, which is a belligerent that has occupied already parts of southern Lebanon and is on a daily basis, as you said, murdering Lebanese civilians. Anyway, just for people to fully understand what that was all about. Yeah.
So the Lebanese army left the area. So people who jump into conclusion and start calling them traitors, no, these are our brothers and sons and daughters, and like, no, we know that there is an agreement between the resistance and the army up until now, which is being shown in the statement that was released by Haikal yesterday, to say that unity is the #1 priority for the Lebanese army. So because of that, and because of his refusal to take part in these American demands, however you turn them, they are American Israeli demands that are being promoted by Nawaf Salam and now the president, who is groveling. He's groveling. I'm not even making up. Go and read his statement. He's groveling at the feet of Zionist Israelis, and no one is even picking the phone to answer him. Not in Washington, not in Tel Aviv. And he's being spat at by the enemy, and he still grovels and tells them, we will take out Hezbollah. Try it. Let's talk about this later. I don't want to get arrested during Ramadan. Try it. Let's see what will happen. Right. Rudolf Haikal. What did Rudolf Haikal do? Lebanon, at the moment, according to multiple intel reports and multiple political reports, may be entering a very rare and an extremely dangerous constitutional moment where the chain of command between political leaders and military leaders might become contested. Why am I saying that? Because the executive branch of the government wants to see Hezbollah removed, disarmed, arrested. They even issued an arrest warrant for Sheikh Naim Qasim, the Secretary General of Hezbollah. It's like, okay, how about you find him first? Okay, then we'll talk about it. But it's very important. Why? Because Haikal, the commander of the Lebanese army, refused effectively signals that the army leadership believes any internal military confrontation would risk the national collapse completely in Lebanon, completely. It wouldn't leave any place out of harm. So we have continued threats coming from the Zionist Israel bombardments, aggressions, occupation, attempts of infiltration, and massacres. You have the presence of armed terrorist groups who are under the leadership of the Al-Qaeda terrorist Abu Muhammad al-Julani in Syria that are being prepped to invade the eastern part of Lebanon. So opening a domestic front at the moment is not only stupid, it's deliberate by the colonial powers to weaken the resistance and weaken the soldiers in the Lebanese army. They want to see the Lebanese army disintegrated. Why? Because this would give grounds for terrorists to come from Syria and take control. God forbid. It's not going to happen. Trust me. When you see women in Nabi Shid firing at Zionist Israelis, you know that it's not going to happen. But it will lead to a lot of catastrophes, a lot of deaths, a lot of massacres. We don't want to see that happen. So what does the Lebanese constitution say about that specific matter? Because we were talking, according to the Lebanese constitution, how the power is divided in Lebanon and how it's made to become into a regime. The army, the Lebanese army headed by the commander is formally subordinate to the civilian government, specifically the Council of Ministers. So the boss of Haikal is actually Nawaf Salam. The commander of the army does not possess independent political authority to challenge the government. This is according to the Constitution. Any military intervention in politics, including a coup or an attempt of a coup, would technically be unconstitutional. This was, if you look at it, this was put into pen and paper of the Constitution by the Imperial West, specifically France. If you go and look at the Constitution in France, it's not like that anymore. But we kept the very first draft and never changed it. The draft that we took from the French in 1936, and we never changed it. Okay? So, because Lebanese politics are more reality-based, historically more complex than what the Constitution states, the army has often acted as a stabilizing institution rather than just purely a political instrument in the hands of the Prime Minister to do as he wishes, because it would lead to deeply divided and externally influenced entity. So what would happen if Haikal, of the commander of the army, continues to resist the political orders that could spark eventually internal conflicts, as we've seen? We have several scenarios that I spoke about in my post that I'm going to be mentioning fast for the people to understand. And the first scenario is institutional compromise. What does that mean? The most stable outcome would be a political climb down by the government, quietly shelving the idea of confrontation between Hezbollah and the Lebanese army to maintain a neutral position. Halas, be neutral. There's a war. Why don't you just wait until the war happens and then we can sit and discuss any strategic defense strategy that you want? You can't put a knife in the back of the resistance, especially when there is more than 1.5 million Shias at the moment in and around the capital. Are you mad? Are you mad? These are our sons, daughters, and brothers that are at the front line. Want to put a knife in their back? Okay. Second scenario. In this case, if the first scenario happens and the government actually climbs down from the conundrum that it put itself in, Haikal remains in command, the army preserves national unity, and political actors avoid pushing the state toward any sort of collapse. But this is what I think will happen. Scenario 2, attempted dismissal of the army commander. They want to remove him from power. If the government attempts to actually remove Haikal from power, what will happen? It will appoint a compliant figure. The situation becomes significantly more dangerous. Mind you, the Americans had already, ever since like when the war broke out again in Lebanon, they sent 3 different names that could take Haikal's position. They're already preparing for it. We don't know what the names are, but we can figure it out because, as I said, even the army is politically divided according to sect. So, what would happen if scenario 2 happens? They take Haikal out of his position. Possible consequences would lead to resistance within the officer corps. And the statement of Haikal did not represent him alone. It's represented and it's signed by patriotic officers. There could be refusal by parts of the army to even recognize the new commander. This is a disaster. They have weapons. You know, they could fire at one another. A crisis of legitimacy within the military institutions. What would happen if a scenario 3 happens? And that's the scenario 3 that now the president is starting to work on, because the prime minister has his own mark of him pushing Haikal into accepting his requests, if not change him. The president on the other side is making phone calls with Julani, telling him that he's welcome to come and invade Lebanon. Scenario 3, the military intervention. The most extreme possibility would be a preemptive move by sections of the army leadership to prevent what they see as national destabilization. So if they see national destabilization being pushed by the president and the prime minister, they might take action, which is, according to the constitution, illegal. But they might take action because they would find doing something illegal much more, it's better, much more sacred, much more stability would be imposed than to actually go to a civil war or least to say internal strife. So historically, militaries in fragile states have justified such moves as necessary to preserve national unity and to prevent civil war. This could be a very big possibility for Haikal to do, but this scenario is conditioned to the fact that the entire army force will accept it. Because we know that parts of the army forces are Sunnis, parts of them are Samir Jaja affiliates, so they might say, we don't want it, we want to leave. But if the majority of the army sticks to their commander, even if those people leave, nothing will change, okay? There might be some certain skirmishes in the areas that belongs to their sects, that is the majority for their sects, but not throughout the entire country, which puts the entire civilian life in danger. So the most dangerous outcome definitely would be division within the army itself, and it would be the biggest nightmare for any commander of Lebanese armed forces. I'm pretty sure Haikal doesn't want to see it. I'm pretty sure the president doesn't want to see it, because the president issued his statement while wearing his military uniform. It's against the law. He's now a president. He's trying to show Haikal that he still has influence over the army. That is not the case. You chose to take off that uniform and step into a political position. You can no longer step back at all. So if rival factions begin pulling certain officers and units in different directions, the country would face a scenario where 2 military chains of commands can emerge, units align with opposing political forces, and the army fractures along sectarian or political lines. In 2 words, civil war.
Yeah.
So all of this is crazy. It is pushing the army to fight its own citizens. It is pushing it to weaken national defense structures. That is to say that we even have the national defense structures, and coordinate security agendas with external adversaries, those same external adversaries that are paying for our blood to be spilled. They're paying for the bombs, they're paying for the jet fighters, they're paying for the battleships in the Mediterranean to bomb us, to kill us, to commit massacres against our people. This morning, a massacre in the Bekaa. Horrible, horrible, from the same family. And I posted a photo of them on my X account and my Telegram. They're from the Tahan family. And if you just look at the photo, Vanessa, it's like you see your family in it. They're having a birthday party in the kitchen with some fruits and some fries and even the cake. If you look at the cake, it's something that poor families purchase. So but what do you see in their eyes? Love, affection, a family coming together, everyone hugging one another. That's why they went all in that massacre, because they stayed together. And this is what Zionist Israel did. It keeps taking the lives of the ordinary citizens who just happen to support the resistance